Good afternoon, and welcome to our summer camp safety presentation. Good morning if you are on the West Coast. Again, we are glad that you are joining us, and it takes a minute or two here for everybody to filter into the presentation. We're just glad to have you with us today. My name is Chris LeBrun. I am the marketing and communication manager here at Adventist Risk Management. And just, again, this is a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. I spent 8 summers working at a couple of different camps a long time ago. And I'm sure a lot has changed in summer camp ministry since then, but it is nice to be able to think back and be back in that world. And we're just so grateful for all of you that are active in that ministry and are joining us today. I think back to many pre-weeks when I was having safety presentations, and hopefully this video will be shared with some of the camp staff that is joining you for this summer of ministry, and we're just so excited to have you. Want to go over a couple of our housekeeping things. If you have been in a webinar before, you should know this already, but there is a Q&A button down at the bottom of your screen that you can use to ask us questions. We will be taking some of those live in the chat form during the presentation, but we'll also answer those again at the end with David on the screen. And again, for those that are watching the recording, that's where you will get those responses to the questions that are asked during our live webinar. So please make use of that Q&A box, and we'll be happy to answer those questions. But I'm going to turn the time over now to David Fournier. He is our Vice President for Client Care and our Chief Client Care Officer here at Adventist Risk Management. And I know David has a heart and a passion for summer camp ministry. So David, thank you for leading us through this conversation today.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate the opportunity. And I appreciate, Chris, your support and help to make all of this happen. And thank you, everyone who's joined us. I'm not going to be able to look at all of the items that are going to show up on my screen here real fast, but I do see we have a good number of participants already. I saw Tracy Wood on the list. So thank you, Tracy, for joining us. And thank you for your leadership, too, of the North American Division in the area of youth ministries and the collaboration that we've enjoyed over the recent years. So just a little bit about why we're doing this webinar and what this webinar will be about. Chris kind of opened that well for us. We're hoping that this can be a resource from Adventist Risk Management, especially for the summer camp staff that are serving at the camps across this summer. And some of you may be summer camp staff this summer. Some of you may be youth directors, camp directors, or serving in any number of positions in leadership with our summer camp ministries. And we hope that the recording of this is a benefit to you as you're orienting your team. Now, obviously, we're not going to be able to provide all of the orientation for you, and this is not meant to replace your effective orientation process. But I hope that what this does is support the orientation process that takes place at each of the camps. And we thought we would try a little different approach this year and make this, because so many things are being done virtually this year, that we would make this available as a recording online. So if you have questions, please do put them into the Q&A feature, and we'll look forward to addressing as many of those as we can going forward. So who is Adventist Risk Management? This is especially for those summer camp staff who may not be familiar with this particular ministry of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. We have been around as a ministry of the Seventh-day Adventist Church for about 85 years. Actually, we're celebrating our 85th year this year. So it's a long tradition of serving the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And we are the church's official insurance and risk management company. And it's an interesting thing that the Seventh-day Adventist Church owns that kind of a resource. But we have been able to work with all kinds of interesting ministries around the Seventh-day Adventist Church and around the world for quite some time. So let's get into some of the more specifics of our presentation. I want to start with an overview of what is risk management. And this is not necessarily a recruiting opportunity that I'm thinking about, but maybe you'll be interested in what risk management is. And you may be surprised to discover that actually you engage in risk management every day. And as somebody who either leads or works or whatever it is that you're doing at our summer camp ministries, you have an opportunity to engage in the process of risk management, whatever it is that you may be doing and assigned to do. So it's really three core concepts: the idea of risk identification, understanding risks, realizing what are the hazards, what are the potential consequences to a given risk or hazard. Risk control, what are the steps that we can take to either prevent a loss, minimize the loss, or avoid a loss. And then lastly, and we won't spend a lot of time on this today, is risk financing. And that's a transfer of risk through insurance to another party, usually the insurance company. You'll see how we can apply those ideas in actual day-to-day activities as we go along. But I want to encourage you to think larger than yourself as you're serving at the camp, whether you're a camp counselor, an activity director, if you're working in the kitchen, whatever it is that you've been assigned to do in whatever way that you're contributing, I want you to appreciate and enjoy, but feel a certain sense of responsibility that you do represent something much larger than yourself. And I hope the first thing you think of when you hear me say that is, yeah, I do. I represent Christians. I represent my faith. I represent someone who wants to share the gospel. I represent my church. And in a very real way, as a summer camp staff, you represent your camp. So getting into more of a legal perspective, when young people, minors, are registered and they show up at camp, the parents drop them off and there's a transfer that takes place. And now those young people are in the care, custody, and control of the camp. And the camp has to have good supervision. They need to make sure there's good elements thought through, such as safe food to eat, safe shelter, medical emergency like Band-Aids and what have you that are needed. Those are reasonable expectations that a parent has, that when they drop their child off, that there are the right measures in place to make sure those precious children are going to be cared for. So let's take that just a little bit further. The camp, in that sense, has taken on a duty. That's a legal term again. They have a duty now to protect those young people. And you serve a really important part in that process, especially for those of you working in those activity roles or counselor roles. You're going to be working very directly with those young people, and it is very important for you to ensure their safety, give them good guidance, and help to ensure that the protocols and the direction, the guidance from the camp that you're at are followed to care for those young people. I wanted to share this story. Dear Mom and Dad, this is from Tommy. We're going to pretend it's a real story for a moment. My cabin counselor said we should all write our parents every week. So here's my first letter. First week at camp has been awesome. I've already learned so much. My cabin counselor taught us how to swing on the cables hanging from the ceiling in the gym. Don't worry, it's totally safe. He says he almost never gets electrocuted. And when it does happen, it's not that bad. Life lessons. Last night, we played Ultimate Hide and Seek. It's called Ultimate because we play at night. The big storage fridge in the kitchen is my favorite hiding spot. They still haven't been able to find me there. After our game, we were going to have a big campfire before going to bed, but it started raining, so we couldn't. Brian, my bunkmate, says if it rains tonight, maybe we should do the campfire in our cabin instead. We're going to collect some firewood later today. Well, I've got to go. I'll write again next week. Love, Tommy. Well, I hope Tommy's still around next week because he is up to some interesting hijinks there. This was written by a colleague of mine some years ago, and well, anyway, we wish Tommy well. When we share this kind of information in person, I will usually ask for folks to identify some of those elements that might have gone wrong in this story. But you can see those, and you can see some opportunities, like Tommy's hiding in a storage fridge, and why is he able to access that location? And that's a quite unsafe location to be located inside. All right, let's keep going. Strategy for success. And I love this text. I think it was written very much with camp ministry in mind. Where there is no counsel, the people fall. But in a multitude of counselors, there is safety. And I bring that idea up because I think it's really important for those working in camp ministry, especially the summer camp staff, to operate as a team. I know your leaders will also encourage you and direct you in how to work in your individual responsibilities, but also the value of teamwork, of helping each other see things that you might not have seen or they may not have seen, and communicating together. And that's really what this is about, is keeping the doors of communication open. From Adventist Risk Management's perspective, operating the insurance company of the church, often what we get to view is, once a claim has taken place, some sort of loss, an accident, an injury, damage to something has taken place. What we've learned over the years from managing those claims, from looking at the loss analysis from all of our insured organizations, is there seems to be actually more incidents that take place that are near misses, or I'm never comfortable with that term, near miss. Is it a miss or is it a near miss? But there are often incidents that don't result in a claim. They nearly did. And I think it's important for all of us, all team members, to have our eyes and ears open and communicate about those things that might happen, whether or not it turns into an insurance claim or not. Because if someone is, sort of tripping, or many people are tripping as they enter the cafeteria or your food, lunch area, perhaps, we don't need to wait until someone really hurts themselves before we examine what is the cause of this. Everyone seems to trip there. Maybe it's a carpet that's been rolled up. Maybe a board on the floor has become loose. But identifying, seeing that, communicating to someone who can do something about that is really, really critical. And I know your team will appreciate if you have those eyes and ears and are communicating about it. So this is just some of what we're going to go over for the next several minutes. We want to talk about a few of these items, and I hope that your orientation process will include a lot more deep dive into each of these elements. Just a note on communicable diseases. Obviously, we're recording this well, it's the end of May 2021, and we've been experiencing a COVID-19 pandemic for some time now, since about March of last year. And last year, many of our summer camp ministries did not operate either at all or at full capacity. I'm encouraged to see more of the camp ministries operating in some way this year. So there is some return to open that's taking place, and that's what we're excited about. But just keep in mind that wherever you're serving, there will be differences of protocols that are in place based on either the state or county requirements that are taking place there. Listen to your leadership about how that is going to be done. Are there cleaning protocols, hygiene protocols? Are there distancing protocols that you need to follow? And it's going to vary from place to place. So if you're, chatting with someone who's doing ministry in a different state or different camp ministry, they may be experiencing a different set of challenges and requirements. So we're not going to get into the potential requirements for every jurisdiction in this particular presentation, but please be aware of it. Take it seriously for where you're located. And please also be aware that, different people have different sensitivities around that and different perspectives. So we want everyone to be listened to and to be heard and to have a great time, a safe time at camp. These are some of the key pieces we believe are part of managing this communicable disease challenge at this time. Obviously, there's the cleaning part. There's some of the mitigating elements like, social distancing and wearing masks, as well as other elements. But communication, helping everyone understand what the expectations are, and then evaluating the procedures on a regular basis. Just because there is a plan doesn't mean that it won't need to be adjusted in due course. So please do bear in mind that sometimes we have to be responsive to the realities we're facing. So just be open to that. So question for you: what is the most important thing we can do to protect our campers? And that is supervision. Just wanted to share a few ideas with you about supervision. And this is especially true for those who are working with the activities and the counselors. There are so many factors that really weigh in on the right supervision ratio. I'm frequently asked when working with different people in different parts of youth or children's ministries that, what is the right ratio? And there's some differences between the different environments of church volunteering, schools, and camp ministries. But there's some good principles that are universally true. And I want you to think about these as you're working with those children. There can be factors that should weigh on this decision more than just the numbers I'm about to share with you. Okay, so it depends on people's age, the children's age. You're going to see that in the next slide. It also depends on the risk of the activity. Some activities may be very, very sedentary, safe types of activities and may require fairly low levels or minimum levels of supervision. Some other activities might depend on the ability of the participant, and that can vary. Sometimes there's not always a direct tie between someone's age and their ability with something. When I was a kid going to camp, the first place I wanted to go was to the horse barn. I grew up in Ontario, Canada, and I went to Camp Frenda. And you pass the horse barn as you enter the camp. And man, I just couldn't wait to get right back there. Horses fascinated me. And so I just wanted to be all involved in that. I was a great deal of fascination around that. And I hope that our young people are still fascinated with that today. However, what I've heard from some of our camp ministries leaders who serve especially in that area is there are some trends for people to be less comfortable around horses. And so, especially if they've never encountered a large animal like that before. So there may be some different abilities and comfort levels with some of the participants. We just need to be able to see that and be able to respond appropriately. And it also depends on the ability of the supervisors. When I was in college, I had the opportunity to go to school in France. And I don't know if you know our school over there at Cologne. There's a beautiful rock face behind there, and we would go rock climbing. And I had several friends with all the gear, and so we were able to do that. My enthusiasm for rock climbing does not translate into my ability to supervise and direct or teach that type of activity. So just knowing that there is somebody who's actually qualified to lead out in that activity is an important piece for some types of activities. So I hope you'll be mindful of that. On the supervision ratios, I want to share with you the standards that we were able to see from the ACA. ACA stands for the American Camping Association. It might just be Camp Association. I'll have to look that up. That's going to be sticking in my head now. But the ACA standards do indicate for ages, and you'll notice this is all about ages, and it doesn't talk about some of those other elements like abilities or the types of activities. But just as a minimum standard here, ages 6 to 8, it's a 1 staff to 6 camper concept as a minimum standard. Ages 9 to 14, 1 staff to 8 campers. You see how in our graphics here, the staff is a compass and the campers are the little backpacks. I really appreciate our designer, did a really neat job on this. And then ages 15 to 18, 1 staff to 10 campers. But like I said, really important for us to bear in mind the abilities of those individuals, whether it's the supervisor or the camper, as well as, the difficulty of the activity. Also a really, really great concept, and it's right here at the bottom, use the rule of 3 as a minimum standard. It's a really good idea in regards to child protection and protecting your own reputation as you're working with children to ensure that you're never alone with a child. So ACA and the American Camp and Camp Ministries here in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, we promote the use of the rule of 3 as a minimum standard. Some of you may work in local church ministry and may be familiar with, the 2 adult rule, and that is the appropriate concept for that environment. But here at camp, this is the way we do things. I want to share with you a great resource. We did not make this particular presentation all about child protection in regards to preventing child abuse, but I want to point you to a great resource on that. If you are familiar with the Adventist Learning Community, and you can see the link there below, and I believe Chris and team are putting that into the chat area. And I think we'll be able to link that also in sort of the show notes under the recorded version later on. You can see the AdventistLearningCommunity.com, and then either you can follow that out or search for camp safety. And I found it very easily. I was able to look through the course and get a sense of what was being covered there. And I think it's a really important course in the area, especially of supervision and preventing child abuse. And that needs to be a top priority for us in our camp environments. Camp ministry is, in my view, one of the most amazing ministries and perhaps underrated ministries in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. I think it reaches so many young people for Christ that I would just like to emphasize, as valuable as that is, when there is an incident that someone is hurt in that way in particular, with an abusive situation at camp, it damages so many lives so permanently. It's hard to estimate the damage it causes. So please be your brothers and sisters keepers. Ensure that your teammates are following the protocols that you're being instructed to follow at your camp, because you should value your and their reputation, and we must prioritize these children's safety above all other things. Let's move on to some other items. This may not be a popular concept, but it's really important. In regards to transportation, this is something we do see taking place at camps when we visit. And it is important that you know there should be no riding on the backs of golf carts, pickups, and utility vehicles. And what I mean by that is where there is not a seat and a seat belt, you should not be sitting, and no one should be sitting in those places. Supervision in a vehicle is just as important as supervision on the ground. What we're referring to here is, sometimes there might be an off-site trip. Maybe you're getting into a bus or some other type of vehicle and taking a group, off-site. Yeah, we do a pretty good job, I think, of providing great supervision, in those environments that we're used to. The cabins, the cafeteria, the worship, the fire area. But then we get into those vehicles, and sometimes the supervision becomes less effective. It's really important to maintain that, to stay active and alert, and to be good leaders for those young people, even during those moments of transportation, and make sure all persons have a seat and a seatbelt. That said, I do realize there is a vehicle for which a seatbelt would not be required, most school buses. So your camper falls and scrapes their knee. What do you do? Let's look at some first aid and health items. Most camps, I hope all of our camps, have some sort of medical person on staff who's able to help with those sort of minor incidents that would take place. So I hope that there's some orientation to that for you, that you are aware of what to do if there is, blood. You need to be very, very careful around blood, and that there will be some specific protocols that your camp nurse or whoever's in charge of that will be able to instruct you on. But also simple things that all of us need to lift together on, and that is helping our fellow team members and those campers avoid things like dehydration, or getting, are they wearing sunscreen? Do they have the bug spray that they need to use? Avoiding exhaustion. Some of our camps are located in places that can get very, very warm. Some places have mountains where you might be at a higher elevation, where you need to drink some more water and be careful about exerting yourself. Being aware of medical limitations as appropriate. Really, really important to just kind of everyone be looking out to those things, and not just for those campers, but for each other and our team members as well. Sometimes when we're a young person, or not even that necessarily that young of a person, we may kind of have a hero moment where we're feeling, no, I just have to push through. I'm feeling a little bit lower, but I need to do this. And it's important. Be careful with that. Know your limitations, seek help. You may need to communicate with your team members and get some support too. It's not just about you being a support, it's having the support of those around you to make sure that you don't get completely ill. Your health matters and needs to be preserved as well. All right. Equipment. This is one of those items that I really want to encourage your focus and attention. We use many types of equipment at camp. Helmets, harnesses, life jackets. You could probably list a whole number if you have climbing equipment or ropes equipment. There are quite a few items that you may be familiar with those activities you're doing specifically. But it's really, really important that our campers are using that appropriate safety equipment. And one of the best ways that you can lead is by leading by example. I always found it a bit interesting when I would see someone say, here's all the things you need to do, and then they would walk off and not do that. It does not send a good message. So the other part about these is they need to fit correctly. They need to actually be in good condition. Uh, I remember going to one place that I would attend from time to time, and there would be a bin of life jackets. Hey, grab one of these and jump in a canoe or a kayak or whatnot. And in some of those pieces of equipment, those life preservers, personal flotation devices, whatever they're called today, they were in some pretty bad condition. And you really do need to be sure that those items that are available for use are safe for use. There was a loss that the Seventh-day Adventist Church experienced a few years ago, not very many, that is still the largest single loss financially that we have yet experienced. And it relates to a piece of equipment that was not safe for use. So a young person in that case was injured very, very badly. And so it's important for us to inspect those and make sure that they are good and ready to be used by our campers. What do you do if they are not? You need to alert leadership. You need to make sure that that's not available to be used. All right, activity safety. This is sort of the fun part for me. We're not going to get into every potential detail, and I want to make it very clear. This is not going to replace the orientation that you should have or whatever certifications that are necessary to conduct this activity. But it's a few items that hopefully will just at least raise some questions in your mind, and certainly things that we find to be important relative to those activities. So let's take a look at the waterfront. Keep an eye on yourself and watch for the twos: too tired, too cold, too much sun, too far from the shore and safety, and too much strenuous activity. Water safety is critical, and one of those, frankly, higher risk areas. It's typical of the experience of summertime and camp. And I grew up, like I said, up in Northern Ontario, which is just filled with lakes. If you're from maybe Minnesota or Northern Michigan, that's a very similar kind of place to where I grew up. So we were swimming all the time, but it's really, really important to remember that this isn't just some child swimming with their family anymore. This is a child in your care, custody, and control at your summer camp, which is part of the Seventh-day Adventist conference. And the expectations are that child will be cared for to a degree that maybe even the parent might not have done themselves. So important to test for swimming abilities. This is really, really key before kids are given the opportunity to just participate in various swimming activities. Having a testing process is really, really important. Know your limits, see what their limits are, and stay within those. Identify your weaker swimmers and keep an eye on them. Don't swim alone. If there's no diving signs, observe those regulations. Also watch for changing weather conditions. That can happen very quickly in some places. And never leave a child alone. Let's take a look at horsemanship. Like I said, this was one of my favorite areas when I was at camp as a young person. And again, it's just talking about check your equipment before riding, making sure that you're using the right sized equipment, both for the horse as well as the individual participant. I know some rules may vary out there in regards to the closed-toed shoes and the long pants. It will depend a bit on what your your team is doing there and what realities that you have in that location as well. Let's keep going here. Rock climbing. Like I said, I really enjoyed this, especially during college. But again, gear in this case is very, very important that it be in safe working order, that individuals have their helmets, that, we don't have individuals climbing alone, that there's the right amount and qualified supervision in place for those activities. That one can be a lot of fun if done safely. And emergency planning. I want to encourage you in the area of emergency planning. There's different kinds of emergencies that can take place at camp. Somebody is, in fact, one of the most common emergencies that might take place is a medical emergency. So have you been oriented to who to call out for, whether it's on the phone, radio, or just who to go looking for, in a medical emergency? So likewise, fire is another type of emergency. And in some locations that may mean a building fire. In other places that may also mean the potential threat of wildfires. Some of our camps are located in some pretty high risk areas for wildfires in particular. So knowing what the protocols are around that. In fact, your camp may undergo a certain amount of orientation and drills to prepare you as a team to be ready for those different types of emergencies that may happen at your location. What I'm asking is that you take those orientations very seriously. Here's why. The interesting thing about an actual emergency is, well, there's a few interesting things. The first thing that occurs to me is that as people, we tend to be a bit slow to realize that the circumstances we're observing are telling us there is an emergency taking place. If you've ever been, sleep in bed at night and you hear a loud noise, what do? Well, you wait to hear it again is what most people do. There's not an immediate reaction, and when you're sitting in bed and you hear a loud noise, usually it doesn't necessarily require an action. But it is interesting that we tend to just sit there and wait to hear it again. We smell smoke. We first start going through all of the things smoke should be: a campfire, food being prepared. There's a lot of good explanations for fire. However, there are some really, really emergency problem reasons for fire as well. And there can be a delayed understanding. I am looking at a fire that needs to be reported. Something needs to be done about it as soon as possible. That can be true of many types of emergencies. So that's number one. We tend to have a delayed response to emergencies. So drills will actually help you understand and process that more effectively if it's an effective drill. The next part is that in a real emergency, some interesting things happen. I'm not a doctor, but there are some interesting things that happen in our bodies and in our brains. And the end result of that appears to be that we lose a lot of our fine motor skills and our best decision-making abilities. So what does that mean? Again, the importance of the drill is to have already made the decisions before you're actually in that moment. If in a fire, these are my two options. If, it's a violent incident, these are my three options. Whether it's a medical emergency, this is my priority. It simplifies that decision-making process, whatever it needs to be for the given emergency. And it also makes the decision ahead of time to a great degree so that you're able to just focus on doing rather than higher level decision making at that point. So that's really, really important. And I encourage you to please do listen, pay attention, engage. I know it can seem a lot like a lot of fun and a drill and like a bit of a game. I do encourage you to enjoy it, but do take it seriously, internalize it, because in the event of a real emergency, you will be relying on those decisions, that training for real. So what is risk management at our summer camps all about? It's about doing the right thing. It's about leading our young people. It's about collaborating with our team members. It's about learning and growing together in Christ and making a real positive difference for our team members and all of those young people that come to camp. So when we talk about safety, it's really very similar to the work of Jesus when he was here on this earth. If you read the Gospels, everywhere Jesus went, he made things better. He healed the sick. He raised the dead. He cared about other people's well-being. And that's what safety is all about. It's about doing the right thing. So I really appreciate you. I thank you. I have a great deal of gratitude for those of you who are working and choosing to take your time and energies to make our camp ministries a success. Thank you for your leadership in risk management as well. No matter what your role may be, I really appreciate your efforts in that area, because working together, we can ensure that our camps are run safely, effectively, and are able to be effective about their mission. And that's the main thing. We look at it that Adventist Risk Management is really Adventist risk a ministry. It's not just a business; it is a ministry, and we appreciate your partnership in that at this time. So that brings me to the end of the comments and the presentation we have today. Chris, do we have any questions we need to look at here before we sign off, or where are we at?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to mention, if you have a question, you can put that in the Q&A. We will answer that now. We shared out some links for additional information. As you were talking about emergency drills, David, I could not help but kind of flash back to hearing 3 whistles, which was a code red drill, meaning somebody was missing from the lake. And it gets that adrenaline pumping. I still cannot hear 3 whistles to this day without thinking about those experiences. But we did have one question here from Roger, talking about golf carts. We mentioned those briefly, and he asks, most golf carts do not have seat belts. So what advice do you have in the use of these vehicles? And we did share out our info sheet on golf carts, but is there anything more that you want to say on that, David, as we look at the safe use of golf carts?
Sure. I think just use them as the manufacturer delivered them. And some of them may not have golf carts. But, I think the key in regards to seat belts has a lot more to do with, vehicles such as pickup trucks. And the back of a pickup truck is not where humans should be located if those vehicles are moving. With some very, very, very rare and careful exceptions, we need to take those seriously. Hi, Roger, by the way. We've known each other for some years.
Yeah, and I think certainly anytime golf carts are out, kids want to jump on and take a ride, and you can easily get 10 kids on a golf cart. Not safely, though.
No.
If it's
and not all of our camps have golf carts. I've noticed them at some camps, and they're just not present at others. But most camps do have what are different words for them, but a type of utility vehicle, usually used for whatever work needs to happen around trash pickup or whatever.
Its team is driving those.
Yeah, and those are really useful tools to have, but it's also important to remember that all those young people are watching, and and our summer camp staff are just as important as anyone else, and we don't want them to be injured either. And they may have a lot of great energy and, athleticism, but they need to also be careful and safe. Yeah.
Carmen asks, does ARM have any basic indications for camps in regards to COVID-19? And I know you touched on that briefly, but it's a confusing time. It's they're changing quickly.
It's changing quickly, and it's changing differently, in different locations. So happy to have more of a one-on-one conversation around that, with the opportunity to kind of dig into what's happening in a given area, to inform that conversation. But I know even last year there was actually more than one or two, but there were a few, and it was a few camps that were able to open, and they were able to navigate, during sort of the hardest times of the pandemic, and just following certain protocols that were necessary in their area based on their local health department, county, and state requirements. They were able to navigate it, and successfully. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're seeing many more camps able to operate this year. I don't think I want to get into trying to unpack that here, because it could be all over the place. Yep. But yeah, happy to have a conversation on that.
What about vaccinations? Is there any guidance or expectation in terms of staff being vaccinated against COVID-19?
Yeah, so that becomes one of those areas where it certainly moves us into a safer zone, right? If the more of our team members who might be vaccinated, especially because they are working with, groups of children, young people, campers, or in some cases there may be, other elements like parents and different types of camps that are less of the mainstream of what I'm thinking about when I think of summer camp, because I always just go back to my own experience, But yeah, I think it's a really it's an opportunity to move things in a safer direction. It's one of many benchmarks that may help you. And there's conversations around that right now, certainly with our legal teams, both at Adventist Risk Management and the Office of General Counsel of the General Conference, around, requiring employees to have vaccinations. So I'm not going to speak ahead of them on that. They're doing research. They're dialoguing, they're looking at what's taking place, which is developing across the country as well. But it's a really good question. And at the very least, we know what we can say is that it is a benchmark that helps you. It certainly adds a large safety element to at least your team members.
Another question here on the insurance side of things. Are summer camp staff covered by any kind of insurance other than workers' compensation? What if the staff member is involved in a court case where a loss occurred?
Okay, well, I'm not going to comment on a claim, although happy to do so one-on-one. But so there's a few things. Yeah, there's certainly workers' compensation is a piece of it, but there are also there's a summer camp insurance product that we make available. You can see information about it on our website. If you go to adventistrisk.org and then there's insurance, you should see summer camp right there. Most of you should have received the package of information about that from the account executives on our team already about a month ago. So there is a package there, and one of the options for that insurance actually gives an option for the staff as well. And it's just sort of low-level coverage because, slip and fall, get a little sick, that kind of thing, may be of benefit. But primarily, workers' comp should be the first first line of defense and sole remedy. What's interesting about the camp scenario, man, it's a lifestyle, right? This is not like a 9 to 5. You don't just show up and leave, right? So what becomes interesting is the lines around what is on the clock, what is work time, what's not work time, when you never leave work. Right. And, in the past, there's even been issues around some individuals who did leave work and, were injured outside of the camp environment and on a day off. And as young people, certainly those situations tug at our heartstrings, but they are a bit of a different issue as well.
Yeah, it's very, very important for understanding what that safety coverage is there. So, well, I think that is the questions that we have. Again, if you have any additional questions, you can always reach out to your account executive and talk with them. And I know David is happy to take questions as well that maybe go a little bit deeper and some of those things that we've touched on here today. But again, thank you so much. David, do you have some parting words for us?
Well, I wanted to follow up on that because, like I said before, I can't see all parts of the screen necessarily when I'm doing this. But I see that question. What if a staff member is involved in a court case where a loss occurred? And like I said, I probably can't expand on that too much. But when it comes to liability cases, against the church, we tend to coordinate with all of those church representative participants in that case, unless in some rare cases where they may have done something illegal. And even then, if it is in the best interest of the case, sometimes our defense team will defend them because it helps us defend the church organization. Beyond that, I think we'll leave that one for now. Yeah, but it's a good question, and probably would work better with a specific example, which probably we couldn't talk about here, but one-on-one would be happy to explore that.
Well, again, thank you all. We wish you a wonderful summer full of blessings and safety as you work with young people and share the love of Christ with them. And again, we are happy to partner with you in this. So thank you for being here. Again, we'll post this recording on our website and we'll make it available to you for you to use with your camp staff as you begin your training this summer. So thank you all. Blessings to you, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Chris?
Yeah.
Before we hang up, just wanted Tracy asked a good question there in the chat. Now that I'm paying attention, I won't let you hit the close button.
That's all right.
But it's a really good question of, what other webinars are being planned into the future. And I want to say, I mentioned it in there. We had a slide, we gave you a link, but there's also, please do go check out that course on camp safety. It really gets into protecting our children against abuse that's in the Adventist learning community. That's not one of our webinars that's coming up, but I think it is a resource that this group needs to go take a look at and get into, take it, share it with your team members. I think we have some other things coming up. Chris, you could probably speak to. Isn't there something on hurricanes coming up soon?
Yeah, next Tuesday, if you are in an area that is affected by hurricanes, of course, June 1 is the start of the Atlantic hurricane season. We will be hosting a webinar to talk about protecting churches and schools and other organizations doesn't apply to everybody, but we would love to have you back here next Tuesday, and information for that will be on our website. If we're taking time here, David, I'd also like to promote Solutions, which is our e-newsletter. And not everything that we publish in that applies to summer camp ministry, but there's a lot of other good resources that are often applicable to that. I'll put that link in the chat, but you can just go to adventistrisk.org/subscribe. That comes out every other week. It's free, and we'd love to have you subscribe to that to learn more about safety and risk management.
All right. Thanks, Chris. And thank you all. And hope we see you soon.
Have a great day, all.
All right. Bye.